We have this poll from Quinnipiac. This one's got people all hot and bothered. 2024 presidential race stays static in the face of major events. Quinnipiac University national poll finds RFK Jr. receives 22% as independent candidate in three-way race. Now, the interesting thing here is that with the independent candidate, they say that Joe Biden wins. They say, well, let me just pull up the actual Quinnipiac here from 538. They say, actually, it looks like if they include Cornel West, but Joe Biden gets 39%, Trump gets 36%, and Kennedy gets 22%. Now, a lot of people are responding, especially Trump supporters, being like, what's 22%? Who that are you polling? Now, Quinnipiac also has this poll, including Cornel West. I love it. If Cornel West runs, apparently Trump still loses. Okay, wait, hold on a minute. I'm like, it's really funny when they put both of these metrics out at the same time. Okay, so it's Biden, Trump, Kennedy on the ticket. Kennedy gets 22%. But if you add Cornel West, someone pulls 1 point away from Donald Trump. Are they implying Cornel West will take 1% of Trump's voters? Cornel West, he's super far left, right? I mean, that's ridiculous.
He's according to the same demographic as Trump, 100%.
Sure. It's a ridiculous idea that Trump would lose because of West and Kennedy. And when you look at all the other polls, take a look at this one. Redfield Wilton Strategies, Kennedy 10%, Trump wins 40-38. They have another poll showing it's 35-33 with Kennedy at 10%, probably because they might have Cornel West in there. You have this one from McLaughlin, Biden 35, Trump 38, Kennedy 12, West 2. McLaughlin also has Trump winning. All the other polls, at least Abacus has a tie. So there's one poll showing Trump losing. I guess technically it's a Quinnipiac has two. And then Abacus showing a tie. And the other polls, we've got 1, 2, I believe 3, 4. 4 other polls showing Trump wins with Kennedy on the ballot. I don't know for sure, but I'm definitely leaning towards. I do not see Trump voters leaving. I'm not talking about MAGA. I'm talking about moderate independent types. I don't see them being like, oh, vote for Kennedy instead of Trump. Some maybe, but it's mostly going to be Democrats who think Biden can't win and that Biden is horrible. He's corrupt. He's a warmonger, and they're going to vote for Kennedy.
Yeah, I agree. I think Biden's doing all the work for himself. All the work for these other candidates right now. In my district in Ohio, it's highly independent, and I see a huge swing for voters driving towards Trump just because of what he's standing for and the fact that he's getting attacked so terribly. I mean, they're seeing the reality of politics right now.
I heard a Biden speech from, I guess, 4 years ago, and man, he sounded clear, like a normal guy. And now when you listen to him, it is freakish. He is just tired.
It's exponential. Mm-hmm. It's like the decline accelerates the older you get. So it's a curve straight down.
I'm so concerned. I'm torn because I'd like to meet him and help his brain a little bit because he is our commander.
But you can't help his brain.
Just listen to him, like let him kind of wake himself up a little bit.
Well, and it's degenerative, right? I mean, that's the sad thing about dementia illnesses, right? Like any kind of elderly atrophying, it's not reversible.
It's not coming back.
You can't. I've seen THC consume amyloid plaque, which is the cause of Alzheimer's, in a microscope. I'd have to continue to look for more data to back that up, but I believe I've seen that. Also, I hear psilocybin helps people in older age.
There might be in the future, but right now we have very little, if any way at all, to slow or stop these progressive degenerative diseases. And I think that's
stem cells right to the brain.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's something, and maybe if we're testing them, experimental treatments, giving it as an option in the VA, maybe Biden can have a chance to try this out. But realistically, in the next year, he is not going to suddenly improve, considering we've seen a consistent decline in the last 3 years.
So if he walked into a chamber and it closed and and he came out and he looked like 38, would you vote for him?
No.
If he was healthy like a 30-year-old?
He's a Democrat. I mean,
he's still evil.
The thing is, he can look 38.
Now he's young evil.
He will look 38, and I still need him to close the border, which he won't do. He wasn't ever. You know what I mean?
Get all that Biden money back though from the gap.
Yeah. What's the story now? They $40,000 in laundered payments.
Oh, what's that?
Yeah, there's like so there was the $200,000 payment from his brother. Mm-hmm. Now apparently there's a report about $40,000 paid directly to Joe Biden, which appears to be laundered from China.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I'm glad you brought up the border. It's just I probably you guys talk about it a lot. Hopefully it gets talked about a lot. Are they building it up right now? Because it's like, if we're really about to spark a war in the Middle East or like jump into the fire over there, we better have closed borders.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point,
That would make
we're already
sense.
through
Yes.
it.
If you were in a dangerous neighborhood, I've said this 100 times on the show, but if you were in a dangerous neighborhood, you would lock your own front door, and instead we're like, no, it's fine. Let's open all of the windows. Let's just pretend like everything is cool.
But it's not just that. If you're going to throw a flaming bag of feces at your neighbor's house, you're going to also lock your doors because your neighbor is going to get mad at you. Now, I'm not, I guess I could technically say the U.S. is basically doing this because we shouldn't be involved in this stuff anyway. But the U.S. getting involved in all of these conflicts and leaving the back door open, yeah.
And the front door with Canada. Like, I know there are allies, but that doesn't mean Canadian or that doesn't mean like Chinese tanks can't just roll through central Canada into like Wisconsin.
There's no barrier, dude.
No.
There was a story about a bunch of like 20-year-olds, and they just drove down the border and then just turned into the United States. And I think they got in trouble
The Pacific Northwest, yeah.
because there's no barriers there.
No, nothing.
You know, there's just like, it's like the trees are cut and they have drones patrol sometimes. You go to the southern border and it's like some areas, you know, there's nothing, but there's a lot of bollard fencing.
Yeah.
And then there's patrols that go up and down. And you've got the militias down there.
Yeah. Didn't we have the Chinese military was caught practicing some drill or performing military drills in Canada last year, if I'm not mistaken?
I don't think they were caught. I think that was like a joint effort between Canada and China.
Yeah, it seems like the Chinese don't want any military conflict with the U.S. They had Gavin Newsom over there to talk to Xi, President. I was going to call him Emperor Xi, President Xi.
But you know,
and they
look,
were like, we're going to do anything we can to preserve peace between us.
I
wouldn't put it past them to say that and then declare an invasion. 'Cause that's like stuff Hitler would have done.
I saw a video of a guy in China eating at, I think it was a Pizza Hut, and they can stuff the crust with hot dogs. And when I saw that, I was just like, we're doomed. You know, and I wouldn't
This
say
is the
half kidding.
end.
I would say that's 75% a joke. The reality is they are competing with us in a lot of ways that we should be the best at. And I don't literally mean putting hot dogs in pizza. It's just that we're giving up our manufacturing. Only now in the past several years seem to have realized that we've given up the industry and manufacturing we need to maintain an economy. And now you're seeing China's, they're cranking away. They're burning coal, baby. They're just smogging it up.
And by the way, I'm going to interview James Tour at Rice University's leading graphene scientist on Earth. And they're working on flash Joule graphene, where they hit carbon trash with lasers and can produce this black powder, this stuff. This is the 21st century building material that we'll need to revolutionize our country with.
I don't know, though.
One of them, probably.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's just like the graphene story came out 20 years ago. It was like graphene, the wonder material, 20 years ago. And so we got some cool stuff from it. But, you know, I wonder, I think it's really going to come down to the basics. Are we producing steel? Right? Are we?
Well, I think you can put this stuff in with like carbonized steel if you're going to make it and make it stronger and lighter. And also with coal, like you were saying, we burn coal. You can upscale coal into graphene and burn it cleaner. So there are some. I'm very excited. It's going to be Friday afternoon, so keep in touch on my Twitter and you can watch it there. So there, let's reindustrialize. Go for it. What were you saying?
Oh, I was just saying, I mean, I want to believe in science and innovation. I really do. But I get sort of frustrated with it when ultimately, you know, if graphene is the future, maybe it is. I know nothing about it, but is America going to do something about it, or is it going to be China, right? Like, what country is actually most likely to be ahead in terms of manufacturing these things? And I would assume it's the country where we put all of the manufacturing. And so in some ways, we've hamstringed our own ability to embrace innovation by shipping all of these things overseas. I mean, even if someone in a lab at a university in America comes up with something, ultimately the technology is getting shipped out of the country to develop, in my cynical opinion.
I would counter that those would become obsolete factories over there now. We'll start building new ones that focus on flash Joule creation.
If we build them here, I'm okay with it. I just don't know that we will.
Well, that's what we're trying to do in Arizona and places like that, where we could actually have these factories. So if that actually happens, then a lot of like the reasons for taking Taiwan or protecting Taiwan become secondary to us actually having the factories back in the United States. That's not all manufacturing, though. Like, China can still out-manufacture us with like raw products, but when it comes to like technical manufacturing, yeah, that's gonna be huge in the next 20 years.
Biggest place we're handicapped in comparison with China is in regulatory framework.
Yes,
I mean, if you look at, you know, how our government hyper regulates not only the industrial side of manufacturing, but then the energy side, right? And I mean, that's my kind of my wheelhouse, right? And that's why we have, the stifling of small modular reactors, and we have companies that American innovators that are having to take their technology to Canada and go through the regulatory board there, hoping that the NRC here, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission here, will finally open up the gates and allow them to build SMRs here. And we're losing out in every
What's an
aspect.
SMR?
Small modular reactor.
How does that work?
It's essentially, it's a mini reactor that is, mechanically
Small
incapable
modular reactor
of melting down. You can power a small city with a reactor the size of this room. You need no operators.
It can't melt down.
Right, cannot melt down.
What's the fuel source?
Still uranium, but it's
Too small.
passive technology. I mean, it doesn't rely on operators. The way it's designed, I'm no physicist or nuclear engineer, but the way I understand it is the recirculation system, the cooling system, they're all passive and reliant on condensation and the systems working in cohesion with one another. So there's no operator manipulation.
What about thorium salt? We've heard a lot about that.
I think thorium salt's another awesome opportunity for us that we're just. I mean, there's reactors out there that. I mean, there's ways to convert our retired coal plants into thorium salt reactors.
Really?
There's America. I used to work for a guy that invented that. Name is Dr. Singh, and he introduced it to our federal government, Department of Energy. They don't like it.
Why aren't we doing these? Why are we not doing it?
Because the money is not going in the right pocket.
It's because of Greta Thunberg, isn't it? That son of a...
She's hungry for the cash.
Greta!
In your experience, how has the American public's opinion shifted on nuclear? Because I feel like that's ultimately, if there were people calling for it, eventually someone would do it, right?
I mean, they're doing it. The problem is, I mean, there is a specific paradigm around nuclear power. People drive by cooling towers and they think that's the reactor, and a lot of it has to do with the nuclear power plants not having to market over the years. They've been in regulated environments where they know they're going to charge a certain amount per megawatt, and they're going to get paid because people have to turn their lights on. But then when you have different forms of energy that are subsidized by the federal government that undercut the market, then nuclear becomes.
Well, I blame the Simpsons.
Yeah.
But for real, so this is actually true. Simpsons is considered to be a factor, maybe not the biggest, in why there's resistance to nuclear energy, because people grew up watching this joke of Springfield, of mutated fish,
Three-eyed fish,
Blinky, and meltdowns, I think, are a theme of a dozen episodes at least. And so people are consuming media and they're believing these things are based on reality. Right. They say, well, every joke has its truth. And it's like, no, like there's not going to be a nuclear plant so close to you like this. It's not going to blow up. You're not going to die. There are less deaths from nuclear power than from coal. And like, it's exponential.
The nuclear power industry is the safest industry, one of the safest industries in the country.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What's the biggest misconception about radiation damage? Like, I think what happened is when Chernobyl melted down, it just all the spent nuclear corium or whatever was just there, so it was constantly irradiating the environment.
Bursted into the air, and then you had the meltdown, which created the elephant's foot.
And then, had they been able to extract the corium, then would it have no longer been irradiating and it'd go back to normal?
I mean, if you remove the source, then you would have no radiation.
So
But
I have a theory
the problem
about
with Chernobyl was that when it exploded, it sprayed radioactive particulates everywhere, which blanketed down over the region. And when the West was like, hey, Russia, what's going on? They were like, nothing's happening. Everything's fine. And they were like, now we're getting slammed by radioactive particles. So we know something happened.
Yeah.
I was thinking about corium meltdowns. Corium's like the stuff in the middle that when it gets really hot, it goes through cement and it'll just keep melting down. If you pour gold into it, that it will act as a superconductor and allow the corium to cool itself off and release the heat. So it'll harden and then you could extract it.
I'm not sure that gamma rays wouldn't pass through that. I mean, if it could be X-rayed, then you can still have a fission product, I would assume. I mean, the only real shielding mechanism that you're going to have from radiation of that source is going to be water or lead or high density concrete.
It wouldn't be to shield it; would just be more to extract it, so it gets out of its liquid form.
Even then, you have to worry about the dose exposure that you're going to get as a human. You can only get so much before your internal organs are going to be liquefied.
You have to send a robot in to do it.
I think the biggest misconception, based on my personal experience, is that you're dealing with gamma wave radiation instead of alpha and beta particles.
Right.
So this is what I learned when I went to Fukushima. They give you this cloth suit to put on. And I was like, is this a joke? And they were like, this is what you have to wear. Why? they're not worried about you getting bombarded by waves that go through everything. They're worried about the particles landing on your skin, which are radioactive, and then you eating them or getting them in your lungs.
Yep.
So
that's
that's
an internal source.
Yeah. So what you're supposed, you wear these cloth suits, and then when you're leaving, you take them off very carefully. They bunch them up and throw them in the garbage.
We mentioned thorium salt earlier. Can you really quickly, generally explain what that is, a thorium salt reactor?
Oh, that's kind of out of my wheelhouse, but I know that the thorium salt is essentially heated up, probably through the super steam process, and then that kind of creates like a resonating heat source, which then continues to create the super steam, which turns the turbine. Right?
Isn't that really funny? That's all it is.
Yeah.
We pressurize a tube so that it pushes steam, which spins.
It's kind of
a
beautifully
gigantic
simple.
copper
Like I
coil.
sort of like that,
One other
What
question.
was it? It's a big magnet spin, creates an electrical current. That's there you go.
So my other question on
Science.
nuclear is, what about fusion? And I know that these get conflated because they're not even remotely the same process, but they're both called nuclear power, which is kind of weird. Maybe so. But what do you think about fusion? Is that even anything you've ever studied?
No, I mean, in my opinion, the future, again, it goes back to the standard way of nuclear fission, right? Just having smaller, more manageable, less scary to the public reactors, things that, take out the human element, because that's really where you've seen these meltdowns or where you've seen these close calls. What the general public hasn't been communicated to is like there was always a safety actuation system that stopped the general public from being harmed. There's what they call defense in depth. There's always like 3 to 4 different layers of defense, with these nuclear power plants, at least in the United States, right? Europe has totally different standards, but here in the U.S., you had Davis-Besse, you had 3 Mile Island. I mean, we were pretty far away from actually having a meltdown, but when it's communicated to the public, it's all about, scaring them.
Have you heard of those nuclear diamond batteries? Where they have like spent nuclear fuel and they put it inside of like a diamond and then it just gives you a low pulse of energy.
Yeah.
Can you explain that? Really
I don't
quick?
know. I've heard of them, but I don't know much. They
give you like 10,000 years of electricity. Really
For what?
low.
Like a phone?
Yeah, things like that. Really, really low charge. And then I guess you could have a lot of them to create a greater charge. But it's actually nuclear waste inside of a diamond, inside of like carbon.
That's what we're missing out on is this recycling of spent nuclear fuel. When this nuclear fuel comes out of the reactor, it's only using 5 to 7% of its energy potential. And we have like 86,000 or, kilograms or whatever of metric tons of spent nuclear fuel, sitting in the United States that we're not using. And you have countries like Europe that are reprocessing and they're reusing their spent nuclear fuel. We're throwing it in canisters and leaving it at the nuclear reactors across the country. And that's a multi-billion-dollar industry that we could be opening and creating high-paying jobs, high-paying technical jobs for a bunch of people, and we're not doing it.
And people don't do it because there's a fear of nuclear energy
Absolutely.
generally.
Yep.
Maybe not after tonight.
We're changing hearts and minds over here.
Got to.
Nuclear diamonds.
We just need to bring back that guy from the Biden administration, the like non-binary guy who kept stealing luggage. Maybe he can save the day.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.